Hello, everybody. Welcome to this. I think it's third interview with my friend Ioana, and she's really cool and amazing. And I was just gonna say how to introduce her. I've done that in the previous interviews, but she's this crazy, amazing, good witch that I go with really heavy stuff that I don't even want to talk about. I'm really scared. I'm like, Ioana, help me! So I'm just so happy to have her here. And hello, Ioana. How's it going?
Hi, Samo. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm so happy to be here. It's crazy times writing them out.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we're gonna start with really heavy stuff.
Yay!
But it's a kind of funny thing because people go, "Oh, I want things light," but like, yeah, sometimes you have to go into the dark and heavy stuff to get to the lightness. So we're just gonna start with thing that's on everyone's mind, but people are trying to avoid. So it's like all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world, not one particular things, and the wars and this and politics and stuff. And there's like two responses you get. It's like, "Oh, fuck it, I want anything to do with it. Just don't exist. I'm gonna be in Zen," or like, "No, I want to go and start a revolution." And no. So these are like two extreme responses, which we often do. And I kind of go like, is there a middle way or some other way, or how do we approach this and not die or cause more harm to others in the process?
Oh,
Joking, but not joking.
yeah, no, this is actually a really, really good question. And I've asked myself this a million times. And in different times of my life, I've been in many of the said situations. And like there were times when I was, protests and front lines and all of that. And there were times when I was just sitting back and watching um and I think after, because I've given this actually a lot of thought, and I
Mhm.
suppose one of the things that I've come up with, I suppose, is the fact that the best thing that we can do is to know ourselves very, very well, to
Mhm.
know what our thing is, first of all. Like,
Mhm.
what is our inner drive, like, because every person has their own inner drive, and they own, like, it's almost like in an ecosystem, right? Like the ants
Mhm.
have their place, and the leaves have their place, and the grass and the humans and the animal, like everything in the ecosystem has their way and has their place. And just in the same way, us human beings were designed and we're wired differently,
Mhm.
so that each of us have our own role to play in this grand scheme of things. And I suppose where I would start with all of it is, first of all, like really figuring out, okay, who am I? What am I good at? What is my inner calling? What is what is my drive? What
Mhm.
drives me? What makes me feel alive? And and then and then also knowing my boundaries and knowing how much I can handle when it's too
Mhm.
much, and then kind of like deciding, what, where do I fit into all of this. I think that's the starting point for me, at least. you know
That's yeah.
yeah, because I see a lot of the times people who get really, really burned out,
Mhm.
they just get involved and they get all in, and which is good.
Mhm.
There is a time and a place, and
Mhm.
sometimes we need to get involved, and sometimes we need to
Mhm.
be all in, and sometimes we need to speak up, and many times need to speak up, like there
Mhm.
we can do it a bit more speaking up, if, as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
And then at the same time, it's really important to know ourselves and how much we can handle. And also, one of the things that has been coming to me for a couple of years now is also matter of managing our inner resources,
Mhm.
because the way I feel it, for one, is that this is a long-term situation. And
Mhm.
for me, at least, the best thing that I do is to view it as a long-term situation, and kind of, yes, think in the now, and yes, think what I can do right now, and also think, okay, how can I manage my inner and outer resources in such a way that in 10 years time I won't be burned out, and I'll still be able to give, and I'll still be able to
Mhm.
do what I need to do, whatever that is.
Mhm. That's really beautiful and amazing. I like that. It's kind of funny because how I kind of met your teacher, I was burned out once and then I was burned out again. And I was like, there'll be no third time. So I really kind of go like, I will not do it again. And it's kind of funny that you say like sometimes we do need to speak out, and the next year is going to be, I mean, we're not predicting stuff, but next year could be pretty crazy, even not for spiritual people, just like whatever's going on. So I was kind of thinking you're from Romania and you had quite interesting history, to put it mildly, like with the whole stories. And I remember we were doing this workshop a while, if you were there, and Jed was like, let's look back at history, or like our ancestors. What did they do when things got weird? And of course, it's a unique situation, but I was just wondering, like, in your case, in your history, or like just for you, like, what worked in the past? You had this horrible dictatorship and stuff and changes and everything. Like, what did your answer? What worked in your particular case? If that's even a good question.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And honestly, I don't know of one thing that actually worked really, really good. I can tell you what works right now in the circle
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that I kind of walk with, and with the people I know. Like, one of the things that I've been feeling this drive for, and this would have been, well, I would have felt this a long time ago as well, like, oh, let's bring people together. But in the beginning, it was more like say 10-15 years ago, it would have been more like, oh, pushing the river, oh, let's all get together and make things
Mm,
work.
mm,
Whereas now it's more of a this allowing of organically allowing people and things and situations to come together. And then when we to do this really deep work within
mm,
ourselves and for the people, um, in these little tiny core groups. People think that like things that work always have to be big and loud and
mm,
visible. In my experience, sometimes there is a lot of power and a lot of magic in 3, 4, 5 people meeting who have the
mm,
same, who have a similar drive and who have similar priorities. Yes, sometimes it helps to have a similar history, and other times it's amazing to bring somebody in who has a completely different viewpoint. Like, this is one thing that I've
mm,
found very healing over the years. So I suppose one of the things that I feel would be important would be to come together in circles and process and talk about it, like talk about our,
mm,
talk about history, talk about, the pain, and being open. And another thing that has been very healing for me and in my journey with reconciling a lot of our past and a lot of the things that happened was to be in ceremony with people from the other side, like as in from like what we would have traditionally considered the enemy,
mm,
and be there together and pray together and sing together and just sit with each other as human beings and
mm,
listen to each other's pain and listen to each other's stories. And there was a lot of
mm,
tears
mm,
involved, and there was a lot of
mm,
laughter involved as well. And it's an ongoing process, because it's like sometimes it's generational pain and it's a lot of stuff that happens. But yeah, at least for
mm,
me, this is something in my experience that has worked very well. And again, that completely happened organically. It was not something I forced. It was not something I sought. It was just
mm,
something that came, and then I kind of just, went with it. But I suppose, like, to be concise in answering your question, I would say coming together with like-minded and like-spirited people,
mm,
and doing really deep inner work
mm,
and group work, and also allowing for time and space to sit with um, viewpoints that we don't necessarily understand, while at the same
mm,
time being true to who we are and how we are and
mm.
what has happened. Because
Yeah.
most of us carry stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Just a short story or that. I was like, just the other day, I had a circle. The energy was really hard. The next day, I'm like watching videos on Catholic exorcists. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why am I doing that? So I'm listening to this guy, and he's like the complete opposite what I believe in. He's like hardcore conservative guy. But I'm like, listen, listen, listen. And like after 3 hours, I go, oh my God, this is such an amazing man. I love this guy. Like, there's so much wisdom. And I was like, I mean, we couldn't never cooperate because we're different, but he was such an amazing person. I got so much respect for this person. I was like, wow, you know. And just lately, like, I had a lot of criticism for the Catholic Church for various reasons, but just lately I was kind of sitting with Sarah and I was like going, I'm starting to get it. What was the good thing about it? You know, there's really good things about things we don't understand. And I was like, if nothing else, like my grandmother, she would have the rosary and she would pray all the time. She was this holy woman with nothing special. She was living on a farm, you know. I was kind of getting this appreciation for the other side. So I was like this young anarchist, communist guy to change the world. And I'm like, oh, I want to go to church and pray. So it's like, it actually works, but it did take 20 years of inner work. It didn't just happen one day, you know. So I think
Yeah.
that's really good. So the thing that's coming from this, it's like it's really good to come together and be in sacred circles and ceremony, and we need more of that. But it's like it's important we do it properly and right, so it's safe and appropriate. And you've been working with like spiritual abuse victims. That kind of happens a lot, you know, more than we know, I guess. So I want to speak about that, you know, like what's the most common, what's like the worst or the most problematic, but not just direct, even more like subtle cases. You know, with like direct abuse, it's easy. This is happening, this is wrong. But sometimes there's more like subtle cases we don't see. So could you speak a little bit more that I'm not projecting onto your stuff?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and yeah, it's been something like I never planned to work with spiritual abuse survivors to such an extent. It was never something I looked for, and it's just something that happened, and with the years more and more people like kind of started coming my way. And so yeah, so like there is a whole spectrum of it. Like there are cases where there are individual people who got hurt by individual people in ceremony or in therapeutic settings, and then it goes as far as people who come from cults or from sects and all of that. And then also there are differences between people who were born and raised in it and who came in later, and so there is this whole spectrum of things, from very obvious to more subtle things. And I suppose one of the things that is like, just to talk about the more subtle things, there's a lot of gaslighting and there's a lot of spiritual bypassing. And one of the things that I encounter a lot with people who I work with is this this attitude of, oh, well, if you're not better, you haven't prayed enough, you have to pray harder, or you haven't done your technique, you haven't meditated properly enough, you haven't, and there are all these concepts that basically what is happening is somebody who comes from sometimes also an abusive situation, they come and they go and they seek healing, and then they are met with, well, actually you're not enough and you're not doing enough, and that just can spiral somebody down in a really, really bad way. And this is something that is very common, unfortunately. It happens a lot. It happens like I have cases like that a lot, women who have been really hurt. I'm talking physical, sexual abuse, and things like that. And that has been completely dismissed and put back on them, So, and also then one of the things that, and it's really hard to talk about because it's so subtle, and it's not something that you can grasp or that you can say, oh, look, this, they touched her the wrong way. But it's for example, a lot of ceremonies gone wrong where spiritual leaders, they just don't have enough knowledge or or the ability to hold circles in a safe way. And people who for example play around with sacred plants, and people get severely hurt and people even die.
It's dangerous.
Excuse me, from ceremonies gone wrong, so and that's very subtle because it's not easy to prove, right? It's not like it's some consistent abuse or gaslighting or something like that. It's just people go, and then they come to me after a couple of months, and they're like, well, nothing's right anymore. And not in the sense of things have stirred up and they're coming out, and I'm clearing out stuff and I need help integrating. That's a completely different ballgame. I'm talking about, no, like, I'm not feeling myself anymore, something's wrong. I don't like what just happened. And then you trace it back, and many times you end up in some sort of ceremony or circle that went deeply wrong,
Yeah, that's profound and heavy and interesting. It's kind of funny, the question that's kind of coming. This is a general question. There's a lot of talk about, narcissists and empaths, and it's kind of fancy thing, but like, let's get a little more interesting, like, what's an actual empath? What's an actual narcissist? How do you recognize that? Like, I mean, I had to face some of them, and I hoped I would have known before. And for people who might not know, like good people thinking, I want to be good and I want to look inside, and then someone can just come and literally destroy your life without even knowing. Or it could be the other way around. You're like, everyone's a narcissist. My ex-boyfriend's a narcissist. I'm a good guy. And so it's like, how do we navigate it? Because it's so simplified. It kind of became a brand now. It's kind of annoying at this point, but it's not helping, because we do need to know. Like, we do need to protect our sacred spaces for actual narcissist people who would come and do harmful things, So it's a big topic. But like, what could we say about this that's kind of helpful and practically useful for people who don't know, but it would really help them?
Well, first of all, I'd start with saying that and this is one of the priorities in the circles that I hold, or, in the spaces that I hold, is for people to get a very strong, good, intimate knowledge of themselves, of how they work, how they operate, their inner compass, and just really working to fine tune that. So for me, the priority is the people, and a lot of my work is prevention, like that. And that's, I love working that way, and that's why I don't teach techniques. I don't, it's just about, okay, let's see the core of who we are, and let's work with that, so that, or every person knows who they are, what their limits are, what feels right, the cues that the body gives us with what is right, what's off, when it's right, when it's off, and all those really fine-tuning things and subtle messages. So I think that's the priority, because like what you were saying, with the empaths and the narcissists, and how completely overused all of this is. Like, some what people call empaths, some of that sometimes comes from a lifetime of trauma, where you get completely hyper vigilant, and it's not a matter of being more special. It's basically a basic survival skill that some people have built. And sometimes it overlaps with the natural sensitivity that somebody has. And also when we talk about trauma, it's like predators and prey, when like these predators, they will sense a particular kind of sensitivity in somebody, or an opening, or a need, just like any predator in the wild smells the blood, and they they know where to go, And that does not mean at all, by any means, that there is something wrong with the people who that happens to, or that they have attracted that in their lives, or that they have any blame or any, because this is something that, this is one of the spiritual bypassing things that I personally despise hearing, because it really breaks my heart every single time somebody comes to me and I hear this, that, oh, I've been to a healer and they told me that I attracted that experience in my life. I'm like, it literally breaks my heart every single time I hear that. And I hear that a lot. It's not as easy as that. It's not as simple as that. And there are certain, when we do healing work and all of that, there are so many levels you can see something from. There are so many layers and layers and layers and layers, and you cannot apply this layer to this situation. You can't just put a blanket statement that applies in certain cases at a certain extent, at a certain level, to this human basic level of pain and misery and hurt. You know, just don't say that. You know, just
yeah, it's just wrong. The end.
yeah, exactly. Just don't. You know, but so what it like the way I usually explain it to the people is that, for example, if somebody has that a certain sensitivity, or if somebody has lacked, say, safety in their life, safety is not something their system knows or recognizes. So even though mentally, you know, the mind wants to be safe and the soul wants to be safe, it's just it's as if you would have never seen the color blue, and you want to see it, right? You know it exists, you know it's out there, people talk about it, but you have no idea how that looks like. When you see purple that you've seen a million times in your life, you're going to recognize purple, and purple's going to recognize you. That's all that is. It's just a matter of, and then so then the work that comes in is the work where people basically rewire their entire system, and they learn to recognize blue, and first they see one shade, and then, you know, then they're like, oh no, actually that's not a thing, and then, you know, it's scary because you've never seen it before. What if it's dangerous? You know, it is perceived as a danger in the beginning, and so you basically have, so they need to relearn an entire, or learn basically for the first time an entire thing. And so this is kind of the way I always explain it. You know, it's not somebody's fault. It's not a matter of blame. You don't attract this in your life. You haven't, it's just something that you recognize, even though you know it's wrong, even though it hurts, it's just completely familiar. And that thing will recognize you as seeing it as familiar. And that, you know, that's all that is. And so that's why I say that the best thing that we can do in my the way I feel it is to come back to who we are, and to how each of us ticks, and how each of us are wired, you know, what we can, what we can't do, and also where we are in life right now. And just being really realistic and real, and full of compassion and full of care. And when we come in certain settings, because sometimes maybe I won't see the danger because maybe I have a blind spot, but then when I have like 10 other people around me who I know and trust, then it's my prayer that one of them will see it. And they'll tell me, hey, look, did you see that guy? Did you see that speech? That's not right.
Yeah.
Just when they said that. So in a way, it's also a big part of it is also community, and somebody to say, hey, look. No.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, just another question. It's interesting, like, you know, because like as if we're missing a tribe, like a tribe of 10 people, somebody's gonna know there's something, and we kind of lost that, and we're kind of rebuilding it, you know. But the question now is like, you know, it's awesome to have a tribe, and it's great, and I'm so grateful for it, you know, and the family and stuff. But there's like two extremes. I kind of see two narratives. One is like, oh, you know, tribe is family is most important. You need to fix everything with your family, and if you didn't, then you're a bad spiritual person. Or it's like, no, I'm individual. I'm a spirit. I don't really need to connect with anybody, you know. So these are like two extremes. I kind of hear people seriously making that argument, you know, in different cases. So I'm like, and the sad part is like a lot of abuse happens in the family, or, you know, like most of it happens there statistically. So like that's even more fucked, you know. So like, how do you deal with that? This is a generalization, but like, how do you deal if that's happening with your family and friends, and then it becomes an extra layer of a mess, you know? So speak a little bit more of that.
Yeah, well, it's really tricky because we have all these concepts that, yes, in a way, you know, blood family is, there is a part of it where we can't pretend like it's not there, because like we've all had ancestors who were good people, and we've all had ancestors who were not so good people. I don't think there is any exception in the world, you know. We're not all products of enlightened masters who only held hands and sing kumbayas from till from the beginning of time, you know. So and at the same, you know, so we carry all of that in our blood. And then, like you were saying, many times trauma happens within the family of origin, and there are certain degrees to it, and certain things are mendable, and certain things are completely unforgivable, you know, to the extent where, yeah, nobody should be in the same room with their abuser, no matter who they, you know, whether it's their dad or brother or mother or sister or whoever that is. Nobody should have to do it, and nobody should be told that they have to do it. This is another, you know, part of spiritual bypassing, and, you know, oh, you have to make peace with your family and you have to do this. Yes, there is an importance in coming to a place where you forgive and where you find peace and acceptance in your heart for what happens. But like in Romanian, we have this saying, we say, may God forgive you because I can't. And that's one of my favorite sayings. And so, but then at the same time, society, the way just things work, and I was in this circle yesterday with these amazing women. And one of the things that came up was, was family, and was soul family. And how family is much more than sharing the same DNA and sharing the same. And in my own life, I have connections that have been formed in ceremony that are just as strong as the blood ties to my blood family, you know, and that come from like, I was very fortunate, and I have amazing parents and, you know, an amazing sister. And like, I love my blood family, and we haven't always seen eye to eye because because life and because things
we're different.
we're wired a bit differently here and there. But like, what I'm saying is that nobody should be forced or told to be in the same room with people who hurt them. The goal is to make peace in the heart so that they can live their life in the best way for them, so that the hurt doesn't control, you know, eventually. And then one of the things that I feel that has been kind of misplaced in the modern society is this concept of our chosen family, our soul family, and the ties and the strength that comes with these ties. And one of the biggest lies I feel that we've been told, that of course stems from this division that makes us easy to control, is the fact that we have to choose between one and another. We don't choose. We like I've seen this so many times in, for example, in children who were raised in from divorced parents, and many times there are these wars between, you know, mom and dad.
I know.
And then I have seen this, and I've experienced this, where instead of losing a family, a child gains 2 more families. Where instead of, you know, having one male role model, they get 2 in the healthy version of things. And instead of one female role model, they get 2. And then they get 2 more sets of grandparents. And I have seen this, how this can actually work.
Wow.
And how this can enrich a life. And it's the same for us, you know. It's not a matter of choosing our blood over our soul family and our friends and no, it's about, yes, finding those relationships that we can live in and that have harmony and that nourish us, and seeing what we can do when we can do. But no, it's not a matter of choice. We should never have to choose.
Yeah, I really like that, like the third option, the spared option. I think it's either this, either that. What if I get it wrong? And then something third, which is so much more amazing, shows up. And this is so beautiful. We kind of forget that that's always there, you know, and we're so focused on one or the other. So on this, it's kind of funny. I've noticed with myself and with others lately, you know, what happens sometimes in the modern spiritual, people who are like really smart and intelligent and interested in spirituality, they go and start exploring, but they have a very strong mind, like my own last 20 years. And the mind is like super intelligent and super smart. So what tends to sometimes happens, they create this energetic realities and they feel totally real and they're totally real, but it's just a fabricated mind reality. And then this can be like cult communities, you know, could go global, you know. So there's a lot of mind fabricated reality flowing around. They're not judging, but are just going to notice that. And that's a big problem because that's where, like, you know, you should heal yourself 100% because otherwise you're not holy. And kind of crappy, ridiculous stuff often comes from this fabricated mind thing. And it's hard to show or explain because it's really subtle and you can't rationally put it. But could we speak a little bit more of that? Because I think it's important.
Well, I can tell you how I explain it in my circles many times.
Yeah.
You know, when people want to, you know, heal, like be completely, fully, 100% healed, and I'm like, look, that's not the business I'm in, first of all.
Mm.
And then second, well, first of all, this is not a business. It's a calling. It's a way of life. It's not meant to be a business. But we'll do another interview on that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I always say is that even if, just hypothetically, somebody would, through a miracle, find a way to completely heal fully all their trauma, all their issues, all the things that have ever happened to them in their life, and even if, hypothetically, somebody would get there, then they'd have to deal with the whole stuff from the lineage, right? It's very seldom pretty because we all come from people who have history, and history has not been a good place, you know, if what I mean. And then even if hypothetical, they would also come to a place where they would heal all the lineage stuff, then they would head into the people, the collective of their nation stuff. And even hypothetically, somebody were to completely heal that,
good luck with that.
Get into the humanity global bullcrap that happens. And even if hypothetically somebody would do all of that, then you would have the underlayer of everything from the land. So I'm like, everybody just relax, have an ice cream, take breaks from healing every now and again, enjoy life and the sunshine when you have it, and a cup of good tea. And I feel that, like, the best we can do is do one thing at a time, and whatever comes up. And not, like, one of the things that I see a lot, and I'm always really careful with that in a way, is people who are almost like addicted to always being in a process.
Been there, done
where
that.
Life is a constant process, where life is a constant, yes, life is a constant healing journey. It does, you know, it doesn't stop. And we get to sometimes go, right, I'm going to take 2 days off and I'm going to be in bed and I'm going to eat ice cream. And I know it's not healthy and it's sugar and I shouldn't be, and I'm still going to do it because I've been working my butt off. And today I'm going to go have coffee with my friends. And then, you know, I get to breathe. And life is not a constant chase for perfection. Because this is what I find really funny, is that one of the misinterpretations in Christianity, the way I find it, is this separation from God, and this idea that, like, we have to do all this completely unachievable work to reach God or to be accepted by God. In my experience, this is not the reality at all. So it's really funny how people who are completely against the church basically work with the same principles of unachievable healing, and I'm like, no, it's the same thing. Can you just, let's turn it down a notch? And just this, and because this is not what it is about. Like, it's not like the journey from humans to creator is not an unachievable, impossible, long journey, and it has nothing to do with perfection.
Mm.
It's a journey within and into that divine spark that is part of the big spark that created us all.
Mm.
And the way is actually not long at all. And the biggest lie, and this is the thing, is the lie that we are separated. That we are separated from God, from creator, that we are separated from one another, and that we're somehow separated from the earth, from nature, from its cycles. We're not separated at all. What are we on about, you know? So what is it actually that we're trying to achieve? Being perfect? Well, we're never going to be perfect. So let's just chill. Do you know
Yeah,
what
I
I mean?
like that. Yeah, totally. It's funny. That sounds to me like, kind of like different traditions, like Native American, different traditions have this kind of message, like similar to this. And it's kind of interesting. What I really like about elders from different traditions, I have this sense of peace. They're at peace, even though it's crazy stuff. And, they live in communities are completely broken and messed up, and like it's a mess beyond mess, but there's this deep peace, so like that's like something we could aspire to, although not to try to make it into a peace. You don't have to be peaceful, but like when it's natural. So what I think that's kind of missing is the real understanding of how this, not just native, but like all the older or ancient teachings, how do they really work? People like prophet, there's this prophecy and this will happen, so you get like one little bit and like the hope he said this, and then you build this whole new age crap on it, and you're waiting for this date, and then you're like, oh, I mean, we've all done it, but it's especially now, what's going to be, people are so desperate for answers. What's going to happen next year? It's going to be Armageddon or this, and it's like it's become crazy. It's always been crazy. It's like, I would just go back to what is it? What is prophecy? How does this traditions really work? Like what it's really about, not what we kind of think they work and create this popularized plastic version of it. And there's so much of it, it's making me sick, and that's a judgment, but fuck it. And because you've studied this tradition, just tell us a little bit. I mean, it's a big question, but how does it really work? Or like what's the intent behind it? This profound teachings.
Well, I'll just tell you the way I feel it, or how my understanding of this has is that I feel that in most traditions and in most places and lands, we have prophecies that talk about the coming times, that talk about things that happen, and that are somewhat of a warning of what can happen. And I feel that many times people understand these things in a distorted way, and in a way like, oh my god, we need to do something, and we need, and you have this sense of urgency, and people stocking up on cans and flour and whatnot, which is good sometimes in certain cases. I'm not dissing that at all. Maybe there will come a time when we'll need all our cans. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things that I have experienced over and over again with being around elders who do carry those prophecies is that sense of deep peace that comes from the acceptance of, actually, I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to live my life in the best way that I can live my life. And that's plenty. And then I'll be there. I'll try to be as good of a human being as I can. I'll try to do whatever, my mission, my work is in this world. I'll just do my best. I have this teacher, and she used to say, I do my best, you do the rest.
Mm.
And it's one of the things that stayed with me, like pretty much like for the last 16 or so years.
Mm.
And she's this beautiful German woman, Barbara Gramlich. And
Mm.
she was saying that, and that actually was one of the things that has always stayed in the back of my head. And this is one of the things that I have found also in the midst of prophecies, and in the midst of things that I myself feel, and dreams and visions and whatever, whatever comes, and with the things that we hear, and many of those things feel true,
Mm.
like,
Mm.
and at the same time, there is this peace knowing that I'll just do my best. I'll just walk life one day at a time and do
Mm.
the best that I can one day at a time. And it is my prayer that when the time comes, I will know what to do. I will know where to go and who to go with, and that's it.
Mm.
And then all the stress and all the pressure of trying to live up to something that we actually don't know, because it's quite ambiguous sometimes
Mm.
and
Mm.
unclear, and the timelines are, then all this pressure kind of just dissipates and disappears, and we can just relax and lean into life and go, okay, do you know what, that's it. So for me, this is just how I live my life, kind of like, it's not a very, I don't know, mainstream acceptable or understandable way, but this is just how I live my life, and this is what has brought me a world of peace, just knowing that I have a lot of faith and trust in the connection,
Mm.
and I know amazing people. Like, I'm so blessed to know amazing people around me, um, and when the time comes, I just have to trust that I'll know what to do and where to go and where to head. And at the same time, whatever I see as the path gets revealed with every step, I do my best to do what I'm instructed to do, in a way, or if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, it makes total sense. It's amazing. I'm already feeling more peaceful just listening to it. It's kind of funny, because for me it was like I was trying all kinds of things. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, and I tried everything, and then everything failed, and I was like, fuck. And then I relaxed because like I've tried every single possible thing, and then nothing worked anymore. And then like, oh, if nothing that I try works, then maybe I should just relax. I didn't think of it. It was like I tried everything and then
Yeah.
I just stopped, and I was like, and then I had this, could be wrong, but this knowing like I'm gonna be fine because I'm gonna be where I need to be. And if I die, I die. Who cares? I don't want to die. I want to live fully. But I was like, if I know I'm gonna be exactly where I need to be doing what I need to be doing, then there's no problem. Like, so
Mhm.
it's kind of the same thing you were kind of saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I like, for example, I just give you my own example. I come from a very, like, my um original setting, was, from a high achieving environment with, um where things had to be controlled or managed, and I guess ceremony has just obliterated that in me, one
Mm.
day at a time. um and anytime I have tried to push the river, exactly like what you're saying, um it's just whacked on the back of the head. So eventually I just completely gave it up. So now I'm like, nope, if I need to wait in the car for 2 hours, I'll wait in the car for 2 hours, and I'll sing a couple of songs, and maybe I'll say a prayer, and maybe I'll think about whatever I need to think about, and that's it. And if tomorrow I have to work for 14 hours, then tomorrow I work for
Mm.
14 hours, and that's okay, you know. And just slowly starting to live. And of course, I'm not, I'm by all means no master of it or of anything,
Mm.
But it's like with every day, it becomes a bit easier, and this letting go is just like, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, there are days when it's completely hard, you know.
Funny, yeah, that's amazing. It's funny. Just one more thing, it's gonna in my mind. This is of course a gross generalization, but like people living in the Balkans, we had so many things happen. Empires came and fall, systems came and fall, and things were just pretty chaotic. So because of that, at least the majority kind of just don't take bullshit. They like see through things. Not everybody, but like if you have three empires, three system, five states fall to pieces, it's just like you go whatever, and we've been quote unquote blessed or not so blessed by this. But what about people who have none of that? They live in another place, wherever that is, I'm going to name it, and they're completely in the matrix, in the world. They know nothing how things work. They've never seen spirituality. And now, boom, next 2025 comes, whatever is going to happen. Like, what can we give advice to them? They're like, what the hell, what's this? But they're interested. They're like, I'm just first time seeing this video and I'm interested. So what do you do when you're like completely quote unquote in the system, and how do you even start to get out of it? Because I think a lot of people might be forced to do that eventually at one point or not, So what do you think about that? That's a big question, but
Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that I know more or I know less than any other human being on this planet, kind of a thing. And I also don't know that everybody has to get out of the system, because I don't know their journey and I don't know their lives. So one of the things that I have seen over and over and over again is people who work within the system and who are amazing angels and light workers in disguise, and who bring a lot of light inside of systems. Like I've seen this over and over again, and I've worked with many people who are that way. And for me, that's actually extremely precious. Because yes, for the way I am wired, and like it's like just the idea of having a boss in the classical sense, like wouldn't want to go back there. I only have one boss,
Yeah, of course.
But there are a lot of people who are doing amazing work from within the system. There are a lot of angels, and I find that they don't get enough credit or acknowledgement, and they are amazing. They do amazing work, and they bring so much light into really, really dark places. And I just want to, acknowledge that. And then for people who, like who just wake up one day, and sometimes through something hard that happens, many times through a loss, or whatever it is, that they kind of go like, oh my God, no, there is something glitching here. I would just say to take it easy, because many, really jump into a lot of things, and there's this trend now where people jump into really hardcore ceremonies or plant medicines or stuff like that. And that can be a huge shock to the system. Yes, sometimes it's completely unavoidable. Sometimes life will just flip a switch, and that's going to be super hard to kind of like manage. And that's a particular type of cases, and the particular, and with that, like any support that they can get, is good, and I always say find something that works for you. Like for some people really connect with the spiritual work and with prayer and with ceremony and something like that. Other people connect through their body, or through dancing, or through yoga, or through martial arts, as you know yourself. Other people connect through therapy. Therapy has saved millions of lives. I'm not dissing therapy. There are clients of mine who are like, look, maybe therapy would be a good thing, then we can also work, you know, and kind of so for me, what I would say is, again, to find like maybe try a couple of things to see what works best. Because if you, for example, if somebody's very mental, or you know, they need to understand everything, and then you bring them in a setting where people talk about God and they do prayers, that's not gonna go in.
Yeah.
So they're gonna need a different, you know, a different way. So I feel that like it's really, really different for each, and for some artworks, like art therapy, like drawing or allowing themselves any kind of form of art is amazing. For some it works. So I guess it would be about finding each person's way in towards themselves, kind of a thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Thanks. Like that was like a kind of my vision. I wasn't dissing the system. Like there's amazing things in the system. I was generally kind of noticing structures falling apart, whether we like it or not. I kind of see it like so I was like, that's gonna. I'm not God, but that seems to be where things are going, and that's something we need to be prepared for. Not just it's gonna be. It's not gonna be fine. It's to a degree it's gonna collapse anyway. So you kind of answer the question. But I do want to kind of finish up. I really like that. You know, it's not spiritual or psychological. It's not spiritual or intellectual. Like I think we need both. Like you say, you know, we need sacred circles, and some people need psychological counseling. Some things are not like some things energy makes worse. And people are just gonna go and pray. And no, like you know, sometimes you need to go to a psychotherapist. Sometimes you need to go sit in the woods for a year. I really kind of like that because we have this, you know, some people sometimes have this idea of like, oh, it's gonna be 5D beautiful. I'm just gonna download stuff, and I'm not saying you won't. Maybe you will, but you know, like I don't know. I'm not sure that's how it works. It's probably gonna be everything, and you know, some people have really hardcore mental health issues, and God doesn't really work with. I'm just gonna. Maybe he does, but you know, like there's people who can help you with that, and that's like psychologists and therapists and that, and that's kind of really important because there's unspoken wish or urge or something. I'm just gonna go there and pray and just pray and it's gonna go away. Yeah, you know, yeah, maybe not. So I think that's really problematic because people want to believe they'll be healed. And some people come with a lifetime of trauma thinking, I'm just going to pray. And then they pray for 20 years and they kind of connect, but the trauma's still there. And, you know, so that's kind of tricky. What do you think about that?
Yeah. And also, like, I think there is a part of the fault, if you will, that lies also with a lot of holistic practitioners who promise absolute, full, complete healing and the solving of any and every problem. And I feel that's a big part of it as well, where I've heard this a million times in circles where, oh yeah, sure, you don't need this. Well, you see, I don't know what every person needs, because I've seen people with severe, horrendous trauma for whom really deep spiritual prayer work has completely shifted a lot. And that gave them the, you know, the basically the start to go into other things, and then to undo it, you know, from the body, and then to go into somatic work or whatever. I've seen that happen. And then I've seen people who, like you were saying, you know, they prayed for years and nothing happened because they either needed to understand it through their bodies, or they needed to psychologically understand what happened, or I don't, you know, like that's what I'm saying. Every human being is different. Every person has a different journey. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and I believe it, is that for us, especially for us who work in this holistic world, if you will, to kind of create these networks of people. Like, for example, when I work with somebody and, for example, they will respond very well to plants, or I feel that there's a connection there. Like there are two herbalists that I absolutely adore and who I completely refer people to. And there is a psychotherapist who specializes in trauma that I, you know, refer people to, and homeopaths and stuff like there are a lot of, and there should never be this fear like, oh my God, like no, Oh, I'll heal you. Well, you know, I don't heal anybody. Nobody heals anybody, you know. But so it's a matter of seeing exactly where the person is, and the person can see where they're at and what their needs are. And then I feel that's part of also our responsibility to be able to refer people out in a good way, because ultimately it's about the people and their healing journey, and it's not about us and our egos and that we're bruised because we couldn't, you know, we couldn't do something, you know, in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So that's a lot. We could talk for hours, but just kind of slowly, there's so many things. But it's kind of funny. I think we've spoken about a lot. But just tell us, like, what do you do? What's kind of your work if people are interested, and like they felt the connection? Like, what is it that you do? What's your thing if people are interested? I'm not promoting, but I'm totally promoting.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I have a few things that I do. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is ceremonies. I absolutely adore ceremonies. So I will sometimes work with women through the kind of like rites of passage in life, like for young girls, and then for mothers who are preparing to become mothers, and then after birth, you know, the closing ceremonies and like the rites of passage and all of that. One of the favorite things that I absolutely adore doing is the baby welcoming ceremonies, like the equivalent of the baptisms, if you will. I like that's probably one of the things that I adore doing that. It's just, and it's always such a big honor when people call for that. And then I do a lot of one-on-ones. And in the way that I work in one-on-ones is I work with sacred songs that come from different traditions, that are ceremonial songs, each of them having a very specific purpose and, you know, kind of job, if you will. And then I also work with core cellular healing. And I found that the two really work very well together. And it's just kind of, it's just the way it works for me. And, you know, by saying the prayers, and I'm really grateful for this particular work and for Jer's work and for just the way this works for the people. And then I do healing circles and workshops, like also with core cellular healing. And I will sometimes do drum building workshops and women's groups, and where we work, yeah, kind of. And now lately I've really felt the calling, and I've been kind of putting it off for a long time, for a good few years actually, to create some safe spaces for practitioners. Because I remember, especially like back in the day, some, I don't know, 15 years ago, there were times when I would have really, really needed to get advice from people who were doing this for a longer time than me. And there were a lot of things that were not making sense, and I just sort of needed some guidance and advice and support. And I didn't have it. And I kind of promised myself back then that if the time should come that I could do that, I would. And also, one thing that I've seen is also a lot of practitioners and people who work with people in the holistic environment, there are things that they see, for example, the seers, or, you know, people who dream. And sometimes some of those things, they really stay with you and they burden you, and they're kind of way heavy. So this is something that I'm going to start doing in 2020. What's next year? 2025. And yeah, so that's something that's coming, and I'm really, really excited about it, to create kind of these safe spaces and containers for practitioners where we can come together and also pray, but also just be there for each other in this, yeah, kind of in the way we walk life, and also kind of be with other people who understand that your walk is a bit cuckoo, you know, a bit, you know, a bit. So yeah, this is kind of a part of what I do. Yeah.
That's beautiful, especially the last part is so essential because, like, I was lucky to have a few people like that in my journeys, and if I hadn't, I would have probably killed myself. Like, seriously, there were times I was like, somebody needed to tell me every week, like, you're not crazy for 2 years every day, and if that was the only person who I trusted, I was like, that saved my life. So if that's on offer, yes, please. And I would totally recommend Ioana. She's amazing. I go, we're gonna have this really dark, shitty stuff. Please tell me about it, because because the thing is, it's not about promotion anymore. But not everybody's capable of holding space for that. They're like really heavy stuff, and you go to someone that they really want to help, but they just can't hold it, and then it doesn't really help for anybody. So it's really good to have people who have everything, the ability to hold and understand, and wisdom to keep it. So thanks for being that, and thanks for this
Aw,
chat.
thank you.
And
No,
let's
thank you for the invite. Look, I just do my best, and I'm not, by all means, I'm not perfect, and I've got a gazillion things to learn. And I was also really blessed to have a lot of good people and to still have a lot of really good people in my life who will, when need be, smack me in the back of the head and say, snap out of it, girl. What the heck are you on about right now?
exactly.
That's.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Yana. That was amazing. You will talk more, but I think that's more than enough for a start to get people interested. Thanks a million, and I will
Thank
see
you.
you soon.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.